Hare Krishna, good morning, dear devotees. Today we're speaking from Sri Bhubaneswar Dham in the ISKCON Bhubaneswar Temple. And this is the 92nd session in our series we're calling Meeting in Kuruksetra. So we'll just say a few prayers to begin. Narayanam namaskrityam naram shaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudhirayat Vedi Ramayaneschaiva Purane Bharate Tata Adavante Chamadye Chahari Sarvatagiyate Mukam Karodi Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Paramananda He Madhava Padunga Luchi Makaranda Se Makaranda Panakori Anande Bolo Hari Hari Harinka Name Vandavela Parikori Be Chakadola Se Chakadolanka Padaye Manamo Rahu Nirantare Manamo Nirantare Rahu Ha Krishna Boli Jiva Jao Ha Krishna Boli Jao Jiva Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Dharma Projita Kaitavo Chapadamo Nirmachanam Satam Vedyam Vastavamata Vastu Shivadam Tapatrayam Mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamune Krite Kimva Parayishvara Sadhyo Hridjavarujyate Chakatibi Shushu Subhistaksanat Nigama Patado Galitam Phalam Shukamukadamita Javasam Yutam Pivata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam Muhuroho Rasika Bhubhibhavukam Anarto Pasamam Sakshat Bhakti Yogam Nirhoksaje Lokasya Janato Vidvams Chakre Satvata Samhitam Yasham Vaishyamanayam Krishna Paramapurushe Bhaktirudpadyate Pumsa Shokamoha Bhayapaha Srimad Bhagavatam Puranamamalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam Yasmin Paramaham Samekam Amalam Gyanam Param Giyate Tatra Gyana Vairagya Bhakti Sahitam Naishkarmyama Vishkritam Tachchin Van Supaten Vicharanha Padova Chinana Arto Yam Brahma Sutra Bhadatarta Vinirnaya Gayatri Bashurupo So Vedata Parivrimitaha Sarva Vedeti Hasanam Saram Saram Samudritam Sarva Vedanta Saram Hi Srimad Bhagavatam Ishyate Tadrasamrita Chipta Shanam Yatya Svedvachi Kvachit Krishna Bhakti Rasa Swarup Shri Bhagavata Tate Veda Shastra Hoite Parama Mahatva Chari Veda Upanishade Jata Kichu Hoya Tara Arta Lena Vyasa Korila Sanchaya Jesu Tve Jeru Vishaya Vachana Bhagavate Sehiru Slokeni Bandana Jivera Nistara Lagi Sucha Koilo Vyasa Mayavadi Bhashya Shunile Hoya Sarvanasa Jaho Bhagavata Pada Vaishnavirastane Ekanta Shayakaro Chaitanya Charane Bhagavata Janamane Sejavana Sama Tada Shasta Chijanme Jane Prabhu Jama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, good morning dear devotees. My name is Madhavananda Das. We're here in Jagannath, in Sri Bhubaneswar Dham. These are our adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. We're today at the ISKCON Bhubaneswar Temple. And we're going to continue with our series on the meeting in Kuruksetra. And I want to ask everyone, if you're watching on Facebook or maybe on Zoom, to please be interactive. It's nice when devotees say Hare Krishna where they're from, but better than that, much better than that, is to share some reflections, something you liked or something inspired you, or maybe some questions or comments. So we'll go ahead and start. I want to review a little bit. We've been reading from the 47th chapter of the 10th canto. This is a Brahmara-gita. And as we've been commenting, some Vaishnavas say that this Brahmara-gita is the most important chapter in the entire Bhagavatam. More important than the Rasa Panchadhyaya, 5 chapters about the Rasa Leela, more important than Krishna's Janma, in the 10th canto, more important than the first canto or any other canto. Why? They say because this chapter sets up the events which eventually we find in Kuruksetra and then in Gora Leela. Because it was in Jagannath Puri, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Gambhira, in the 16th chapter of the Antya Leela, where Mahaprabhu is experiencing this mood of Radharani during the Brahmara-gita. This Brahmara-gita is the height of Radharani's ecstasy. So we're going over some of those verses. This is the response of the gopis. Now, Uddhava has spoken Krishna's message to the gopis, and now the gopis are responding back to Krishna, to Uddhava. And I'm just going to read one of those verses. This is a verse we read in our last session. We're going to go over it a little bit more today. This is text number 45, 1047-45. Kasmat Krishna ihayati prapta rajo patahitaha narendra kanya udhaya pritasava suridbritaha. The gopis are asking, Kasmat, why? Krishna iha ayati, why will Krishna come here? Now prapta raja, he's gotten a kingdom. Hataita, he's killed his enemies. He's married the Narendra Kanya, the daughters of the kings. So he must be very satisfied there. They say Prita Sarva Surit Britaha, that he's surrounded by all kinds of well-wishers and friends and that. So here we find some statement which seems very different than what we heard in the previous session. 2 sessions ago, we heard something how the gopis, hearing about Krishna being in Mathura, they were ready to commit suicide. And as we commented, Atmavan Mandate Jagat, our disease is that we try to see everything through the perspective, through the lens of our individual consciousness. And when we hear that the gopis are very disturbed, that Krishna's in Mathura with some other ladies, we think, yes, I can understand this. It's called jealousy. And if my wife or my husband were to do something like that, I would also be very disturbed. And I would also want to commit suicide. We hear the gopis wanted to commit suicide. But the reason Jiva Goswami explains why the gopis wanted to commit suicide was that they were thinking, this is terrible. Krishna's not getting proper pleasure. He's not getting proper happiness, because in Mathura, there's no Vamsivat. There's no Vrindavan Jamuna. There's no Govardhan Hill. There's no Vrindavan forest. How is Krishna going to get proper pleasure there? So they thought better that we kill ourselves. We can't give Krishna pleasure. And then the gopis are thinking, but if there's one person there who can actually give Krishna pleasure, that will be our happiness. So this chapter also indicates, as we mentioned, Mahaprabhu's feelings in Kuruksetra, in Jagannath Puri. And it also indicates the 20th chapter of the Antya-lila, the last chapter of the Antya-lila, which is entitled the Siksastaka prayers. And we see the mood, as we spoke a few sessions ago, of the gopis in Braj, speaking to Uddhava, of Asli Sava Parivratam Panastu Mama Darshana Mahmahatam Kurotuva, that the gopis, they're praying, Mahaprabhu wrote, that whether he gives me darshan or not, a darshana mamahatam, still not prananatas tusa eva napa. He's the Lord of my life and no one else. And we're hearing in this verse today, the text 45, that the gopis are speaking in a very, very humble way. Now, why should Krishna want to come here? He must be self-satisfied there. And as someone commented after one of our previous sessions, this seems diametrically opposed to what the gopis were previously saying. The gopis previously were unhappy that thinking of Krishna can't get any happiness. But now they're saying that Prita Sarva Surid Brita, that Krishna must be very happy. Prita. He's self-satisfied with all these things. So how is it that their mind is changing? Our acharyas comment that the gopis are speaking in their unmadana, or their divine madness. And one moment they're feeling one thing, and then the next moment they're feeling another thing. It's like a transcendental roller coaster, which goes to the top of the hill very, very slowly, and then pauses for a moment at the top, and then comes crashing down on the other side, and then again goes up and comes down. The feelings of the gopis are like that, or as Rupa Goswami describes in one place in Lalita Madhav, their feelings are like the waves in the ocean, rising up and crashing down. And those waves in the ocean in Puri are described to be the sound of the gopis crying. And then the gopis go on in the next verse, they state, Kim Ashma Bir, Ganoko Bir, Anya Bir Va Mahatmanaha, Sri Patir Apta Kamasya, Kriyitarte Kriyatmanaha. That Krishna, he's a Mahatma. He's an exalted personality. He's the Lord of the goddess of fortune. He's Sri Pate. And he gets whatever it is that he desires. Apta Kamasya. So who are we? Vanokobir, we're just dwellers in the forest. How can we fulfill his purposes when he's already fulfilled within himself? So now that we're getting closer to our last session, the gopis here are speaking about humility. They're expressing their feelings of humility. And we heard from Brihad Bhagavatamrita something about this humility, and I'd like to go over a little deeper in that subject today. Narada Muni was speaking to Uddhava, and he said that Dainya Mulakam, that the root of bhakti, the Mulakam is Dainya, or utter humility. And that he goes on, he says there, that Tat Karma Jnana Yogadi Sadhana Duratashtitam Sarvata Narapikshena Bhushitam Dainya Mulakam. That this bhakti is very far, it's very different, it's far away from karma, jnana, yoga, all these different things. And the root of it is humility. When we practice karma, we become very expert in giving charity. we're very expert in performing Varnashram Dharma, we're a very good husband, we're a very good wife. Some pride oftentimes comes. That I'm a very special person. When we have some gyan, some knowledge, then we have to go and debate with other people so we can show our superiority, that I know the real best thing. And we like to think that debate is going to solve things, it's going to establish our movement. Or someone is practicing yoga, their body becomes very beautiful, it becomes very elastic. And again, they develop some pride. So bhakti is very different from that. Dainya mulakam. Bhakti begins at the root of bhakti. Is that door closed? Is should be closed, please. Is utter humility. So then, what is that dainya? Yena sadharana shakta dhamma buddhi sadatmani sarva karshanvite pishyad buddhaishta dainyam ishyate. The dainya is that situation where someone thinks they're asakta. Sakti means power. In other words, asakta means I have no power, I have no strength, I'm incapable. Adhamma, I'm fallen, I have no good intelligence. Even though that person may have all good qualities. Sanatana Goswami says, Sadatmani Sarva Utkarsha. Utkarsha means that very excellent. That person may have all good qualities, but still he thinks that he doesn't have anything. That's dainya. And he says, Narad Muni tells to him that, he tells Uddhava that the example of that humility is the gopis of Braj. Dainyam tu paramam premna paripakena janyate tasham gokulanari namiva Krishna viyogataha. That dainya comes to paramam premna when the topmost love of God reaches its full maturity. Paripakena. Paka means something which is ripe. We say kacha and paka. Paka means something. Paripakena janyate. When something is fully ripe. When the prema is fully ripe, that's true dainya. And the example, Tasham Gokula Nairinam, is a Gokula Nari, the ladies of Vrindavan, Gokul. So then Sanatana Goswami, as we discussed in our last session, says that we should cultivate that humility. Yaya vachehaya dainyam matya chastaryam etitat tam yatnena bhajet vidvams tad virudani varjayet. We should cultivate that dainya with our body, words, and mind. And that will help us. So we described in our last session, I think I used this example when I was a young boy. We stayed in a house in Illinois, which they say Abraham Lincoln stayed in too. At one point, it was a few hundred years old, made out of wood. And when we first went there, there was no running water, there was no electricity. It's quite a beautiful place, actually. And to get water, we had a tea well. To get water, we had to pump the well. And you could pump it for weeks at a time and not get one drop out. And we learned that to get water out, you had to put water in. We call that priming the well. And so you pour a little bit of water, and there's a cup or something inside of the well. And that cup fills up with water. Then it goes down to where the water's at, and it fills up, and then you can start pumping water out. So humility is not, in one sense, is not the source of bhakti. Bhakti sanjayate bhakti in the 11th canto describes that bhakti comes from bhakti. Srila Prabhupada said life comes from life. Bhakti comes from bhakti, but this humility helps in bhakti. And humility is one of the symptoms of the topmost prema. And then when one gets that topmost prema, that humility can help them to get to that point. And that topmost prema, the symptom of that prema is that one has that humility. So Sanatana Goswami says, Paripakena dainyasya, speaking about this paripakena dainyasya, this fully ripened dainya, it's prema jasram vitanyate. When it fully matures, then prema unfolds without limit. That's an interesting point. He's saying prema jasram vitanyate, unfolds without limit. it's not, again, that humility gives prema. Otherwise, we'd see every person who had their legs cut off, or every girl who lost her boyfriend or husband, they would get Krishna prema. Every person has some humility. Humility alone doesn't do that. But when this humility is coming in connection with bhakti, then when that humility, paripakena dainyasya, becomes fully mature, then prema unfolds without limit. And then he says, parasparam tayoritam, that there's a kind of relationship between this dainya and prema, itam karya karanakshite, that each of them is the cause and the effect. And Sanatana Goswami explains that dainya is an integral component of prema, and both they foster one another. So we want to speak a little something today about the humility of the gopis and the mood of the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and why Mahaprabhu, he's given us this Siksastaka prayers, which again is a manifestation of the feelings of the gopis in the 47th chapter of the 10th canto in the Brahmara-gita. And he says there that Chanadapi Sunichena Tororeva Sahisuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahadi. That if we want to chant always, then we should cultivate this humility. We should consider ourselves to be lower than the straw on the street, and we should give all respect to everyone else. Rupa Goswami in his Pajavali gives some very beautiful verses in this regard. He says, Dina Bandhur iti namate smaran yadavinda patitoham utsahe bhaktavatsa yata trayisute mamakam hidayama pate. He addresses Krishna as Yadavindra. This is in the mood of the gopis. But the gopis, they're saying, you're no longer Brajendra, the king of Braj. Now you become Yadavindra. You become the lord of the king of the Yadavas. He says, when Dina Bandhu iti nama te smaran, when I remember your name, Dina Bandhu, then I become encouraged. It gives me some hope. But then when I hear that Bhakta Vatsalya that you're the lover of your devotees, then my heart, Mama kam hridayam asu kampate. The kampate means it begins to tremble. My heart begins to shake. Because the inner meaning here is that I don't consider myself to be a devotee. When I hear that you're Dina Bandhu, the deliverer of the fallen, that's good. That's who I am. But then when I hear that you're Bhakta Vatsala, that you love your devotees, then that makes me very, very nervous and very concerned. Stavakastava chatur mukadayo bhavakastu bhagavan bhavadayaha sevakasattamakadaya suraha vasudeva yadiketa davayam. And Rupa Goswami gives this verse. He says that, my dear Lord, Stavakasta tava chaturmukadayo, that person is Chaturmukh, the four-headed Lord Brahma. He's offering stavas, he's offering prayers, and adayo means etc. He and his associates are offering prayers to you. And Lord Shiva and his associates, Bhavakastu Bhagavan Bhavadaya, they have so much love for you. And Sevaka Satamakadaya Suraha, Indra and the demigods, they're your servants. Vasudeva Jadi Ketadavayam, who are we in comparison? There was one king in Puri who used to personally cook for Lord Jagannath. It's a story they tell in connection with Sweta Ganga. And he would also offer those things. And one day he went a little late and he saw that Lakshmi Devi had cooked and the demigods were offering to Jagannath. And he said, oh, excuse me, I'm really sorry. I interrupted. I'll go somewhere else. I'm not a proper servant. And Lord Jagannath came to him and said, no. I also like your cooking, and I'll accept your cooking, and I'll give you the special place between the ocean and the Jagannath Mandir to be your place. So this is the nature of the devotees. They feel very, very humble when they see other personalities. And that humility is a symptom of their bhakti. And for us too, that humility is something which will help us to develop bhakti. Rupa Goswami gives another beautiful prayer expressing the feelings of the gopis. Parama karuniko na bhavat paraha, parama sochratamo na cha mat paraha, iti vichincha hare mai pamare, yaduchitam yadu nata tad achara. He says, my dear Lord, there's no one, parama karunaika, there's no one as merciful as you. And he said at the same time, there's no one as fallen as I am. There's no one as pathetic as I am. He said, I'm very, very low and very fallen. He said, my dear Lord, you think about my case, you consider my situation, and give me whatever is appropriate for me. This is the mood of the Braj Gopis. They feel themselves very, very fallen. Rupa Goswami gives another prayer to it. If you like these prayers, they're beautiful prayers in his Pradyavali. Nadyatosi na kititosi na manad araditosi prabho najanmantara gochare tava padambo jecha bhakti krita tena ham bahudukka bhajanataya praptudasam idrisim tvam karunya nidhe videhi karunam Shri Krishna dine moi. He says, my dear Lord, Nadyayato, I've never meditated on you. Nakirtito, I've never done kirtan and glorified you. Not even slightly. I've never worshipped you. Namanagadadito si Prabhu. I've not even worshipped you in a slight, tiny bit of a way. And that's why I'm suffering in this situation. My dear Lord, he says, I'm very, very poor. I'm very, very fallen. Oh, hey, Krishna, you're Karuna Nidhi. You're the ocean of mercy. So please, please, you be compassionate to me. Please give me some mercy. So Radharani and the gopis, this is their mood, and they're speaking back to Uddhava. Suddenly now their mood has become a mood of humility. And that's the nature of a devotee. It's the nature of love. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains that the nature of this love is that a devotee thinks he doesn't have it. Premira svabhava jahan, premira sambandha, shemane Krishna mora, nahi prema gandha. This is a premira svabhav. This is the symptom that someone has ecstatic love of God. That in their relationship, their premara sambandha, their relationship with Krishna, the relationship of love, they feel like Krishna mora nahi prema gandha. I don't even have any scent of love of God. I don't even have a drop of love of God. So this is in their ecstasy. The gopis are thinking they have no love for Krishna. And we find this same mood in Kuruksetra. When the gopis are meeting with Krishna there, they're feeling that oh, what do we have? Their ecstasy has risen up to such a level that this humility is manifesting. And we find the same thing in Jagannath Puri. In Kuruksetra, the gopis, they pray, Ahushchate nalina naba padara vindam Yogeshwarai hridi vichinja magada bodhai Sangsara kupa patito taranavalam Geham jusam api manashyudiyat sudanaha. They address Krishna in a very, very humble way. Oh, my dear Lord, you're in the Lina Naba. You have a lotus navel. Lord Brahma comes from that. In other words, they're saying, sometimes they chastise Krishna. They say, oh, you're a badmash, you're this or that. But now the gopis are saying, actually, you're God. Please accept our humble obeisances. Yogeshwarai hridi vichinja magada bodhai. And you're meditated on, a God of Bodhi, by Yogeshwara, the greatest of the yogis. But who are we? We can't do this. Sangsara kupapati totaranava lambam. We're just fallen housewives. We're ladies in Vrindavan. We don't know anything. We have no great knowledge or anything, ability to meditate. We're just fallen persons. So you please give shelter to us. So this is an expression of their humility. And we find the same thing also in Gaura Lila, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and the Antya-lila Mahaprabhu experiencing the same feelings. And again, in Antya-lila chapter 20, Kaviraj Goswami describes Uttamahanapakane mane chena dhamma dui prakare sahasnuta kori brikshasama. That this is a symptom of someone who chants the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. If you're chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, this is the symptom of that you're chanting. That someone, he may be Uttama, he may be the topmost person, but mani Chinadhamma. Mani, he's thinking in his mind, Chinadhamma, I'm very, very low, I'm very, very fallen. Haridas Thakur in Jagannath Puri at Siddha Bakul, he praised the Mahaprabhu. Amita Adama Tumi, Adama Tarana, Ubaye Sambande, Patita Pavana. He said, this is who I am. Ami Adama, I'm fallen. Tumi Adama Tarana, I know who you are. You're the deliverer of the fallen. Ubaye Sambande, this is our connection together. So this is a symptom of someone who's actually chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. They may be very, very exalted, but Chuna Adama, they think themselves lower than the grass on the ground. And Sahasnuta Kore Briksha Sama, they're more tolerant than a tree. Once, Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada's godbrother, there were some senior devotees with some very serious misconception. And somehow they felt that he was a threat to their situation. And they had hired someone to go and kill him. They hired a Gunda. And this Gunda came there with a gun to Navadvip and was sitting in Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj's kata with a gun, waiting for him to finish to get to kill him. And he was hearing the kata, and he became so moved by his kata that he started crying. And he came to him and said, please forgive me, I want to be your disciple. A similar thing happened in Mumbai. There was one local thief, young boy, who saw Srila Prabhupada's wristwatch. And he decided, yes, I want to steal this wristwatch. So he started going to Prabhupada's classes and associating with the devotees. But because he was associating with Prabhupada and the devotees, that association touched his heart and transformed his consciousness. And then he came to Srila Prabhupada and begged forgiveness and asked him for initiation. Prabhupada initiated him and he became Haridas Prabhu. So similarly, some of those devotees who had done this terrible thing with Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, they came to him and they begged forgiveness, said, Maharaj, please forgive us. And he said, well, what have you done? He said, no, you're a great Vaishnava. We've done some. And then he said, oh, I'm not a Vaishnava. And then the devotees knew they're really in big trouble because that's the symptom of someone who's a great Vaishnava, is they don't think that they're a Vaishnava. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has given us a very beautiful prayer in his Kalyana Kalpataru. He sings there, Amito Vaishnava. Amito Vaishnava Eburi Hoile Amani Nahobo Ami. If I have this attitude, Amita Vaishnava, that I'm a Vaishnava, then Amani Nahobo Ami. I won't be able to give proper respect to everyone else. Pratistasa Asi Hridaya Dushibe Hoibo nirayagami. He said, then my heart will become polluted. Pratistasa asi, with the desire, I want to become famous. As one person once told me, the Madhavananda, you have to think about your career in ISKCON. We start thinking about our career with the devotees. We start thinking about our position. And then hridaya dushibe, my heart becomes polluted because I should be coming here to develop love for Krishna. But instead of getting love for Krishna, I just want to have some cheap, a bath in the urine of a donkey, in the language of Raghunath Das Goswami. And then hoibo nirayagami, definitely I'm going to hell. A Vaishnava doesn't think that he's a Vaishnava. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur described in one article, he said that the Vaishnavas should accept disciples. If they don't accept disciples, then how will our Vaishnav Dara go on? He said, but there's one problem. As soon as you become a guru, you're no longer a Vaishnav. In other words, as soon as you have this attitude that I'm a guru, then how can you be a Vaishnava? Because the nature of a Vaishnava is that he gives respect to everyone and he doesn't think himself to be a high person. This is a feeling the gopis are expressing in this Brahmara-gita. This is a feeling they're expressing in Kuruksetra. This is a feeling that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is showing us in Jagannath Puri. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur goes on in his song, Tomara kinkora apane janibo Guru Abhimana Chaji. Tomara Kinkora, Apani Janibi. All that I want to know is, Gurudev, I'm your servant. I'm the servant of my Gurudev. Guru Abhimana Chaji. And I give up the Abhiman, the attitude that I'm a Guru. Rather, Tomara Uchista Padajala Renu Sadanishka Patibaji. I'll always take your remnants, padajala renu, the dust and water from your feet. Sada niskapati bhaji. In this way, sada, always niskapati bhaji. I'll do niskapatya bhajan, or bhajan without any deceit, with any falsity. Another meaning here is that tomara uchistis, I'm always taking your remnants. What does the remnants mean? It means those things coming from Gurudev's mouth. Padmavakya. The instructions coming from the lotus mouth of my Gurudev. And Chitteti Koriya Aikya. I want to make my consciousness one with those words. I'm always eating those things. In other words, I'm always considering the teachings of my Gurudev and whatever I look at in the world. And sometimes I see things and well, maybe the teachings of my Gurudev don't exactly agree with me because I get angry when I see something. I become disturbed when I see something. And my Gurudev says you should be tolerant. You should be, but I just feel like I just can't do that. But still, that's my austerity because I'm going to eat this thing. I'm not going to eat what the non-devotees are telling me to eat, what the non-devotees are trying to get me to think. I'm going to accept the remnants of my Gurudev's words. Chitteta Koriya Aikya. I'm going to make those ideas one with my mind and heart and nothing else. And then if I do that, then I can really do Niskapatya Bhajan. Bhajan without any duplicity. Otherwise, it's Sakapatya Bhajan. It's Bhajan with duplicity because I'm making a show, I'm wearing Kunti Mala, we're giving some talk online, we're doing this and that. But I'm not really considering the teachings of Gurudev. What's the value of a disciple who comes and puts on a costume? Srila Prabhupada in Hawaii, in one conversation with a devotee, said that we're not here just to put on some costume. What's the value of just putting on a costume? The value is understanding the teachings of Gurudev. And I want to make those teachings one with my heart. Otherwise, how am I really worshiping him? I'm just making some kind of show. Nije Shrestha Jani Uchistadi Dani Hobe Abhimana Bahara. So if I start thinking Nije Shrestha Jani, actually I'm a really important person. And this is the danger, I can tell you for myself. When I came Before I came, I was a caveman. Literally, I personally was living in a cave in Mount Lemmon in Arizona. It's the biggest mountain in Arizona. I was living in a cave trying to chant Hare Krishna. And finally, one day, it got really very boring. I decided I have to meet the devotees. So I came down and I met Madhura Prabhu and some devotees in Tucson, Arizona. And he drove me to Los Angeles. So I'm coming, I'm just a caveman. I have nothing. But after being in the Bhakta program for a couple of weeks and I was dancing in the kirtan, one of the new Bhaktas said, wow, you are so advanced. Pretty soon you're going to be a sannyasi, you'll become a GBC, and you'll become a guru. And I was taken aback. Oh my God, I didn't come here for that. But it's like a conveyor belt. You sit down on the conveyor belt and you're the same person, but you start moving. Huh? And all of a sudden you're there in the temple for a few weeks and somebody says, hey, new devotee, why don't you speak something in class? Or maybe after a few years, they ask you to give class and somebody says, wow, that was really a very good class. And then people start giving respect to you. And then the disease is we start believing it. Because the nature of the conditioned souls in the material world is we're always trying to find out who we are. This is the place of the identity crisis. Who am I? Why am I here? And so we're going to the shop just like we go to the mall and we buy some clothes. We buy a cowboy hat and some jeans and we think, yeah, I'm a cowboy. Or a young girl buys a bikini and some skimpy clothes and she thinks I'm a beautiful sex goddess. And we buy our identity off the rack. So we're always trying to figure out who we are. And then if there's 10 people or even 2 or 3 people say, wow, Prabhu, you're really a good kirtan leader. You're a great cook. You're so humble. You know so many verses. You're very learned. You're very gentle. Then it must be true. So many of them are saying, and these are devotees who are saying it. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, hey, sadhu sabadhan, be careful. He says, Nija Shesha Jani. If I start believing like this, because a few people are saying that he's a great personality, then Utistadi Dani, what will happen, I'll want to give the remnants of my food to other people. Or, again, we can take this in the way I suggested in the previous verse. We can decide that I want to give the remnants of my thoughts. And these are my thoughts, not my Gurudev's thoughts. I want to give the remnants of my thoughts to other people. Hobe abhimana bhara. And in this way, abhimana bhara, I get this great, great abhimana. I become very, very proud. Tai sishya tahava, takiya sabada, naloibo pujakara. So he says, I'm fixed in this conception. Tai sishya taba, takiya sarbada. I'm always your disciple. Na loiva pujakara. I'm not going to accept worship from anyone else. Just like the devotees once, they saw Srila Prabhupada, I think it was in Detroit, many places actually. During Guru Puja, the devotees are worshiping Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada picked up his kartals and he started playing and he started singing along. And the devotee, some devotees watching it thought, my God, what is this? He's glorifying himself? No, Srila Prabhupada's not accepting it for himself, but he's accepting it for Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And he used to say sometimes that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur sent all of you. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta himself many times used to say he would offer obeisances to his disciples and call them Prabhu. So you're here to teach me. So when we develop this kind of mood, then we can really do bhajan. Amani manada hoile kirtane adikada dibitumi. When I become amani manada, when I don't demand respect for myself, but rather I give respect to everyone else, hoile kirtane, then my kirtan begins. It's not an institutional thing. It's not a matter of the church. He says, Adhikara dibe tume. You please give me this adhikar. Sorry, our power just went off here. Please give me this adhikar that I can be Amani Namanadina, then I can really do kirtan. Tomara charane niskapate ami kandiyaluti bo bhumi.